This project was purposely designed to bring together the disability state agencies and the DD councils. And in fact, when I was hired by NACDD in the fall of 2012, before I even walked into the office the first day, I had a letter from Nancy announcing that NASDs had gotten this grant and that NACDD was going to be a sub-grantee. And so one of my very first meetings, I had breakfast with Nancy and Mary Lee and said, oh my God, tell me all about this thing. What are we going to do? I thought I was, years behind already in my knowledge base on this. And Mary Lee set me straight and she said, don't worry, we haven't even started. It's going to be okay. And so here we are 3 years later, and it's better than okay. So Shelley asked me to do a little reflection like everybody else, and so in thinking about Dave Letterman's retirement, I did a top 10 list. And I have to admit, I don't even really watch Dave Letterman all that much. I can't stay up that late at night. So somebody tell me, does Dave count down from 10 to 1 or? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I had to renumber because it suddenly occurred to me he does it backwards, not 1 through 10. Okay, so, and these are not necessarily in an order of importance, just 10 random, yeah, neither are his, you're right. So these are just some of my random thoughts of listening and participating in this conversation for the last 2 days. So number 10, the days are long, the years are short. I was thinking the other night when I was packing to come here, both of my kids, I have 2 teenagers, both independently said to me, Mom, where are you going? I said, Kansas City. They each had the same reaction. Again? Where are you going? Why do you keep going to Kansas City? And I said, I go once a year. What do you mean keep? Oh, really? Has it been a year already? Was the reaction. So, my point is we struggle to get through every day. We have so much work on our plates. And you all are doing this project on top of all of your other duties and all of the things that are going on in your busy lives. But when we gather together a year later, it's like no time has existed between. And we're happy to be back together and continue learning and growing with each other. Number 9, everything I need to know I learned in kindergarten. Really. We remember that book that came out and all of that thinking. So I was listening to some of these conversations over the last few days, and we talked about stars, we talked about circles, we talked about squares, we talked about how to raise your hand, we talked about how to count on your fingers, right, Connecticut? We have to respect everybody, we have to listen to everybody. All means all. And we have to learn sometimes how to wait on a line. Or wait on a list, even if that's not what we want to do. But we learn that from the time that we're in kindergarten, how to wait our turn, even when we want to make change and not have to do that. Number 8, we all have progressed in this work in 3 years. The first year I came and I listened to all of this and I went home and I thought, well, I know these guys are embarking on really good and important work, but darn, I don't think I can articulate this well at all. It still kind of felt like, maybe when you pour cement into a big mixer and it's just kind of, you're stirring stuff around and you don't really know what this is about. Came back last year and I thought, now I'm getting this, All of these projects are starting to make sense. You're putting some meat to the bone was how I thought about it last year. And now it's year 3 and gosh, guys, I was blown away by the end of yesterday at hearing about each of these presentations and all of the substance that is now in the work that you have created and will continue to work on. Number 7, person-centered thinking and life course are, as my son likes to say, the same but different. So, I used to say to him when he would say, well, Mom, that's the same, but different. I was like, how can that be? But it's true. Sometimes things are not mutually exclusive. They are different thoughts, different philosophies, and different activities, but they blend together, sometimes seamlessly. And I think some of us, at least at my table, where the South Dakota, I'm so sorry. Moving south, so sorry. South Dakota folks. We had some real ahas, and I think others around the room, as we reported out, had that same thought about how we look at person-centered thinking and this whole concept of the life course, and that they are somewhat different, but they can really work together, and so in some respects, they are the same. Number 6, Deconstructing and reconstructing systems is really, really hard. It was just said that you all had a challenge when you took on this project to really look deeply inside the systems. There is that reason why DSAs were brought together with DD councils to really look at this. You know, sometimes in Washington I talk with people, you know, a lot about federal government systems, and there's, you know, obviously a movement against big government. We always say, you know, if we could start over, we would probably never build the government out the way it appears now. It's kind of like, you know, how many of you have built a house and over time your family grew larger and so you added on a room. And then later maybe you needed something else and so you added on another room, and, you know, kids came back after college and so you redid the basement. And before you know it, you've got kind of this sprawling mess. And it just doesn't look anything like what you started out to make it. And so I feel like a lot of this project is sort of like that. We're taking this big cumbersome system and we're trying to break it back down and really look at it at its core and say, what can we change? How do we start to move away from these big cumbersome systems that are not addressing the needs of families, and either deconstruct it or reconstruct it to become something that really delivers services. I was talking with Kathy this morning as we came in, and she was telling me a frightening story that I think probably all of you have on a daily basis about a family in crisis that just has needs, and a system that often has to say, I'm so sorry, we can't help. Well, that should never have to be heard by anybody. We can't help, get on a list. So the work that you're doing is critical to that, and I do believe that there's going to be change and we'll be able to help better in the future. Number 5, use terminology that everyone gets. I heard a lot of that yesterday, and it was beautiful. You know, this concept, Washington, Ed, loved your slides about a life. And just this very simple graphic of what is a life, the trajectory. Well, gosh, this just makes so much sense. You know, so often in our jobs, we have to talk with people who are not part of our world. They're, as Pat would say, outside the bubble, right? And we have to explain in very simple, easy to understand terms what the heck we're talking about. They don't know acronyms, and they don't know lingo, and they don't know the world that we're living in. So how do we explain things in a way that makes sense? I have to do this all the time because I go to Congress all the time, and I got to talk to staff who don't know what the heck we're talking about, right? So we have to learn to talk in language that the average person can understand and make sense of, that families get, that families can use when they're talking, you know, to the students' teachers and other personnel. So I really like the way that you're going with your language, the terminology that you're using. And I would encourage all of you to also take some time in your teams to think about your messaging. Sometimes we're so busy doing the work that we forget about how we message about it. You know, one of the questions that I was asked to talk about on another videotape later, is about how do you tell other people, what do you tell other people about this project? And like I said a few moments ago, 2 years ago, I couldn't articulate it well. I think I'm getting closer now, but if you could take some time to think about what's your 30-second speech on this, you know, that elevator speech. If somebody said to you, tell me in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 1 minute, what you're doing on this project, can you do that? And do all of you in your team, can you say the same thing? Can you articulate it well and have kind of that one messaging point? It will come in handy at some point if you can do that. Number 4, policy changes influencing our work. I heard a lot about that yesterday, about HCBS settings rules, WIOA implementation, ABLE Act, managed care. All of these things are changing how our states are operating, and you know, they're really big and meaty issues, and I like that many of you are incorporating your thoughts, how you're changing waivers, how you're looking at your policies and your systems, and you're incorporating these big federal changes that are now being implemented at the state level. So keep it up, great stuff. Number 3, talking is still key. You know, we're here at this meeting, we're face to face, and that is still so important. I heard lots of great examples yesterday of ways that people are coming together. It could be over a pizza lunch or coffee. It's a lunch and learn session. It's listening sessions across your states. You know, sometimes we get so wrapped up in our, you know, using our thumbs with our little phones, and we're on our iPads and sending emails, but you know what? There's nothing like talking to people and really having real conversations and educating. You all know that, but it was great to hear how many of you are incorporating that into your work. Number 2, natural supports often work best. Is Jane, Ben's mom, in the room? And Ben's here. Ben, we got to hear your story the other day. Jane, I heard you were stuck on a plane, so I'm sorry you weren't able. But I was just, you know, so struck by that story and Ben's wonderful relationships with his friends at the firehouse and what they mean in his life. And I thought sometimes, you know, what this project has been so much about is helping people understand that you don't always need a service, you don't always need something that's paid for, but it's a natural support. I was having a conversation just very recently with a colleague of mine with another disability organization. She was looking to hire, potentially hire somebody with a disability who I knew, and so she just asked me kind of politely, you know, what kind of supports would he need if I hired him? And I said, he definitely needs supports, but he's also brilliant, and I think he'd be a real asset to your team. So let me ask you this, would you be his supervisor every day? And she said, yeah, I would be. I said, that's going to be mistake number 1. And she said, what do you mean? I said, you run the entire organization. How are you going to have time for that? I said, he needs somebody to check in with him every morning, somebody whose office he can pop into throughout the day with questions or concerns, and somebody he's probably going to check in with again at the end of the day to make sure he's stayed on task. You don't have time for that. So figure out, if you're going to hire him, whose personality does he connect with best? Who does he like? Who does he respect? And make a good match. And that's going to be a peer colleague as opposed to the boss. And that's going to go a much longer way. So peer supports, natural supports, they work so well. So I was very excited to hear that story and know that all of you are working so much to incorporate natural supports and that whole concept into your work. And number 1, please keep being the change makers that you are. You guys are doing phenomenal stuff. One of the kind of geeky things I like to do around this time of year is, you know, there's all these graduations going on at high schools and colleges, and I love to read or listen online to some of the commencement speakers, because there are some really inspiring speeches out there. One that caught my attention, I was listening to last weekend, or I watched it online, was the president of Yale University speaking to the Yale 2015 graduating class. And you know, these are probably brilliant young people going off to change the world, right? So he actually talked to them about a concept that exists in the Jewish culture. And the concept is called tikkun olam, which translated means repairing the world. And so he talked to these students about their role. He said, what you all really most want to know as you walk off the campus of this university is, what do I do now? And he said, what you're going to do is you're going to go out and you're going to repair the world. You are going to take everything you've learned while you were here at this university and in your high school and previous educational opportunities and every experience that you've had. And no matter where you go in life, whether you're working for some computer company or you're working in a nonprofit or you're starting your own business or whatever it is, make sure that your work impacts real lives and helps to repair the world. And I thought, gosh, that's what you guys are doing. You're making big change. You are taking all the experiences of your lives, all of the knowledge base that you have from your jobs, your families, everything that you do, and you are all putting it into practice right here to repair the world. So with that, I really want to thank you for the opportunity for NACDD to partner with NASDs and with all of the DDSs and to really have this great project going on. I'm so impressed with all the work that you're doing. I can't wait to see what I'm going to learn next year. So good luck.